The fluorescent lights above the trading floor hummed like a throat clearing itself before a lie. "Clear your desk! You're done here!" barked Raymond Grant, Horizon Steelworks' freshly installed CFO, voice sharp enough to make a stapler drop and sharp enough to make people pretend not to watch. Mina from HR froze mid-clipboard, the summer intern's fork stilled halfway to his mouth. But Nadia Vega didn't move like someone about to be erased. She moved like someone who already knew precisely how the erasure would look on paper. She was at the copier, waiting for the final page of a compliance packet to spit out, calm as a judge who's seen fraud in every flavor. For 9 years, she had been the quiet, unsung backbone of the firm, the woman who kept messy assets tidy, who rewrote troubled deals at midnight, who negotiated easements while eating cold dumplings in a parking lot. Her fingerprints were on 1,000 successful closings, none of them in the shareholder letters. Her name had appeared on an employee directory once, briefly, then gone. It didn't matter to her, until it did. Raymond puffed like a man who'd been taught by consultants how to feel powerful. "Pack up! The board wants fresh leadership." The words came with the kind of finality only spreadsheets and boardroom buzzwords can muster. There was no firing memo. There was a smiling HR form and a severance outline that read like an apology written by a calculator. Nadia walked through the office like a woman in a slow-motion fight scene, heels clicking time against marble. No shout, no scene, just a quiet reclaiming of composure. "You think you can delete me with an email?" she asked as she slipped her jacket over her arm. Raymond didn't understand the question, because men like him never learn how paper bites back. They believe power is whoever holds the loudest microphone, not who wrote the fine print. That night, after the office lights went out and the building exhaled, Nadia sat at her small kitchen table and opened a manila folder she'd put there 8 years ago. Inside was a copy of an obscure joint venture framework she'd drafted during a long winter when the partners argued over parking spaces and vision statements. She had carved a clause into that document like a locksmith carving a key, a consent requirement for any transfer of portfolio assets above a certain threshold, notarized, witnessed, and buried in a section lawyers considered ceremonial. She didn't write it as revenge. She wrote it because she knew how men like Raymond and boards drunk on leverage behaved. Reckless, hungry, short-sighted. She wrote the clause as insurance against careless empire building. She had saved a copy to 3 encrypted folders, mailed one to her personal drive, and tucked the hard copy into that folder because paper is stubborn in ways emails are not. As she smoothed the corner of the page, she thought about all the times her work had been rebranded, republished, and then credited to someone with a better haircut. She wasn't bitter about the applause she never got. She was precise about fairness and the truth of record. If you want someone to notice you, she had learned, you have to make the record impossible to ignore. The next morning, she did the thing people who've been erased rarely consider. She became inconvenient. She sent one short, impeccably timed email to Thomas Reed, Senior Acquisitions at Meridian Bay, the buyer rumored to be closing the biggest portfolio sale in the firm's history. Subject line, Crossfield Framework, Section 12B, Review Recommended. Body, 2 sentences. One flagged the consent clause. One suggested immediate review. No melodrama, no threats, just a professional nudge to a man whose job was precisely to spot anything that could derail a portfolio. Thomas replied within the hour, terse, curious, an invitation to call. When his voice came on the line, he sounded like a man who feared being the guy who missed something. "We need to see the source document," he said. Nadia said she could provide a certified copy. He asked politely if she would attend the closing to clarify any ambiguity. Nadia paused, then said, "I'll be there." It was the kind of answer that removed speculation and replaced it with inevitability. Word leaked slower than wildfire in corporate halls, but it leaked. HR sent the perfunctory, "We appreciate your contributions" email that reads like a condolence card for a reputation. Internal memos renamed her team Legacy Review, as if renaming a thing could make it disappear. Raymond joked about progress in an investor call and called the past noise. He joked because admitting they were exposed would crash the narrative they were selling to clients and the press. 2 weeks from close, Meridian Bay sent an encrypted invitation to the gala at the Larchmont Grand, black tie, press welcome, announcing the consolidated portfolio as a hallmark transaction. Nadia printed the invitation, folded it into the manila folder, and set it on her counter next to the notarized framework. She didn't tell anyone she planned to attend. She didn't need to. The choice to show up was itself a tactic. Presence is a quiet form of power. The day of the gala, the city felt dressed in glass. The Larchmont's doors opened like a mouth ready for praise. Inside, the lobby smelled of expensive perfume and champagne that had been chilled for victory. Grant walked in with the kind of grin men who rewrite narratives practice in mirrors. His team clustered around him like a flock of PR parrots. Cameras hunted smiles. Reporters asked about vision and scale, as if those words had always been the currency they traded. Nadia arrived late, practical in a matte black sheath that spoke more of function than theater. Hair pulled back, little jewelry, no costume, no plea for sympathy. She carried a slim leather folio, the original framework in a plastic sleeve, its notarized stamp catching light like a small, quiet sun. She sat at the back by a potted ficus that had likely never seen hardship. The room smelled of triumph, and triumph has a fragile ego that flinches when a small fact enters the room. Across the ballroom, she saw Thomas Reed, the buyer's general counsel, a woman named Evelyn Park, standing like a firewall, eyes scanning contracts instead of tails. Their presence told Nadia that the other side had read their homework. It also told her that she was no longer invisible. The gala unfolded like a play, clinking glasses, ribboned speeches, a video montage of glossy aerials set to inspirational piano. Grant took the stage and rehearsed the lines they'd paid consultants to craft. He spoke about transformation and unlocking shareholder value, phrases that always sounded better when you spat them into a microphone with a smile. Cameras flashed as he promised growth and disruption, never mentioning the people who'd built the foundation he was now selling. When he announced the portfolio's close, applause rose like a tide. Nadia felt none of it. She felt only the cool weight of the notarized page in her bag and the slow satisfaction of a chess player who has secretly moved a piece 3 turns ahead. She had not come for the finale. She had come for the fine print. She had rehearsed the moment where truth would be inconvenient, where a clause would become a lever, and now she waited for the right hand to turn it. Somewhere in the crowd, a junior counsel joked about legacy headaches, and the word fell like a bell in Nadia's ears, ringing the exact note she needed. She stood, folded her coat over her arm, and walked toward the Sequoia room, where 8 fountain pens had been arranged like ceremonial instruments. Cameras angled toward the table as if anticipating a photo op. Grant was already there, laughter forced, cufflinks gleaming, the kind of man who believed a smile could rewrite contracts. Nadia opened her folio slowly, laid the notarized framework on her lap, and felt the room breathe in unison. She did not plan a scene, she planned accuracy. If people wanted to pretend their narrative was complete, she would politely offer them the footnote they had missed. Before she could cross the threshold into the room, she tapped her phone and posted 3 words to the channel she knew would reach the people who mattered. Watch the fine print. Then she pocketed the device, smoothed her dress, and stepped in. Not to fight, not to burn, but to make the record reflect the truth. If you've stayed this long and you want to see how a quiet person with paper and patience turns a boardroom into a courtroom of conscience, hit subscribe and like, because this next part is where the notebook opens and the lights get very, very bright. The Sequoia room smelled of polished oak and expensive pens, the kind of scent designed to convince people they were stepping into history rather than another transaction. 8 chairs framed the table, cameras stationed just beyond the doors, reporters buzzing in anticipation. Raymond Grant stood at the head, voice smooth like oil on marble, rehearsing his vision once more for the buyers. Every word dripped with false certainty. Gentlemen, ladies, today we close the deal that will redefine Riverton's future. Applause scattered politely, but in the corner, Evelyn Park, Meridian Bay's counsel, wasn't clapping. She was scanning papers like a surgeon checking a pulse before cutting. Nadia moved quietly toward her, heels brushing the carpet without sound, the notarized framework tucked neatly under her arm. When Evelyn saw the document, her eyes sharpened. She excused herself from the table, motioning Nadia aside. "Is this authentic?" she whispered. Nadia slid the paper forward. "Stamped, witnessed, filed. Section 12B. No major transfer without consent from the compliance officer who drafted it. That officer is me." Evelyn's brows lifted. "And they fired you." Nadia smiled faintly. "Which means no consent has been given." In less than a minute, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a secure call from Meridian Bay's CEO. She spoke quickly, legal jargon snapping like glass underfoot, eyes flicking between the contract and Nadia's calm face. Across the room, Raymond noticed the shift. He saw Evelyn leave, saw Nadia appear, and for the first time that night, his smug smile faltered. He tried to brush it off, pouring himself water with exaggerated calm. But power built on arrogance always trembles when confronted with fact. 10 minutes later, the ballroom murmured with unease. Evelyn returned, this time with Thomas Reed and 2 other executives at her side. She didn't sit. She laid the framework on the table for all to see. The notary stamp gleamed under the lights, undeniable, immutable. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "before we proceed, we need to address Section 12B of the Crossfield Framework." Silence spread like ink. Reporters angled forward. Cameras zoomed. Raymond's face drained of color. This clause clearly states that no asset transfer exceeding 40% of the portfolio can be executed without explicit, documented consent from the compliance officer. That consent, Evelyn glanced at Nadia, has not been granted. Whispers erupted, loud enough to drown out the champagne fizz. Raymond lunged for the paper, stammering, "That clause is obsolete, irrelevant." But Nadia's voice cut through him like a scalpel. "It's binding. I drafted it. I preserved it. And it was never repealed." Gasps circled the room. One investor muttered, "She has the original copy." Another whispered, "How could they miss this?" Reporters scribbled furiously, smelling blood in the water. Evelyn folded her hands. "Until this is resolved, Meridian Bay cannot legally close this acquisition." The entire room spun in shock, except for Nadia, who stood steady, as if she'd been waiting 9 years for this single breath of justice. Raymond's face twisted, desperation leaking through his polished veneer. "You're nothing. You were terminated. You have no standing." But Evelyn's crisp reply sliced him down. "On the contrary, Mr. Grant, termination without consent only strengthens her position. You've ignored a binding provision. You've breached procedure. This deal is frozen until Ms. Vega says otherwise." The cameras flashed, capturing every ounce of Raymond's collapse. Investors began murmuring about negligence, about liability, about lawsuits. A reporter shouted, "Did Horizon Steelworks knowingly conceal this?" Another yelled, "Was the board aware?" And in that chaos, Nadia didn't raise her voice. She simply laid one final page on the table, an affidavit she'd prepared the night she was fired, swearing her authorship and authority. The notarized seal winked beneath the chandeliers. The room erupted. Raymond staggered back as if the weight of 1,000 undone shortcuts finally pressed on his chest. He tried to smile, but sweat betrayed him. "This is sabotage," he sputtered. "This is personal revenge." Nadia met his gaze at last. "You're half right. It is personal, but it's not sabotage. It's accountability." Reporters surged forward, microphones out, snapping pictures as though history had just cracked open. Evelyn announced, "Meridian Bay will not proceed until compliance is honored, and any attempt to move forward without consent will result in litigation." Raymond tried to protest again, but the board members flanking him had already gone pale. One leaned in, whispering urgently. Another shoved a phone in his hand, likely with texts from shareholders furious about the mess. In the corner, Mina from HR, who had slipped in to witness, covered her mouth in awe. She had seen Raymond strut in like a conqueror. Now she was watching him unravel like a bad stitch. And Nadia, she simply gathered her papers, folded them neatly back into her folio, and walked away from the table. She didn't need to gloat. The record spoke louder than vengeance ever could. Outside the ballroom, the night air felt cooler, freer. Reporters rushed after her, begging for a statement, but she gave them nothing more than a sentence. The truth is never obsolete. By morning, headlines blared across Riverton. Horizon deal stalled over hidden clause. Fired officer holds key to multi-billion portfolio. Raymond's photo was plastered everywhere, not as a visionary, but as a liability. Shares plummeted. Calls for his resignation spread like wildfire. Within a week, the board stripped him of authority. Within 2, he resigned in disgrace. And Nadia? She didn't vanish. She didn't hide. She was invited by Meridian Bay to lead a new compliance division, her name finally in the spotlight, not as a ghost, but as the gatekeeper who had changed the game. She accepted, not for revenge alone, but for the chance to build something without erasure. Still, on quiet nights, she opened her black leather notebook, ran her fingers across the pages, and reminded herself, records matter, memory matters. Silence only empowers thieves. Now she spoke, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She knew revenge wasn't always about shouting or striking back. It was about making the truth undeniable, no matter how many microphones tried to cover it up. And to those who had watched her erased and thought she would stay gone, she left a lesson carved in history. Never underestimate the quiet one who writes everything down. If you're still here, listening to Nadia's story, remember this. Revenge isn't about fire or fury. It's about patience, precision, and the courage to bring truth into the light. And if you want more stories like this, powerful tales of betrayal turned into justice, hit that subscribe button right now, drop a like, and share this video with someone who believes silence means defeat. Because sometimes silence is just the deep breath before the roar.